Hello, I'm Peter Parfitt. Welcome to the new Brit workshop. This is my question and answer session number 3. We've got a lot to cover today, so let's get straight into it. Now this is my new jet planer, and it's a bit bigger than the old one, so I couldn't use my old caster carriage, so I've had to build a new one. Now in building this new one, I've decided to go for slightly bigger casters from Coldine, and the reason for that is that I want to raise the machine just a little bit higher. I've made the structure just a bit stronger than the old one as well, but the overall design is pretty much the same, so I'm not going to do a video about how it's constructed. What I would like to show you is why I've made it slightly higher. The great thing about having the planing machine that little bit higher is that when I've set it up as a jointer, as it is now, and I'm doing particularly big pieces of wood like this piece of walnut, then my mobile workbench can be used as an extension of the outfeed table. Now with most router tables, in order to be able to use your full range of cutters on the table, you're going to need some form of collet extension, just to make it easier to put your cutters in and out whilst they're in the table. Now for years I've been using this collet extension. I don't know where I got it from, but it seemed to work reasonably well until a few days ago when I had a big accident. Luckily nobody was injured, and what happened was that the collet of the router, which I've got in my hand now, failed, and you can see that here. And in failing, the collet extension, which is quite a heavy beast, went off at a very slight angle. Cutter was spinning around at a fair speed, and then suddenly the whole thing was out of balance, and luckily the cutter didn't go wandering around the workshop chasing me. But anyway, it made me think. And so I looked into the matter pretty carefully, and this is what I came up with. I phoned the technical people at Axminster Power Tools, and they said to me, you need a shorter collet extension to make sure that you don't get too much vibration. And they've made one specially to go with router tables. And this is it. And the beauty of this one is that it is machined from one solid piece of steel. Then the collet itself goes in, and then there's the screw thread for tightening up. And this is held in your router in the table. The other really good plus point for this is that these little collet inserts like this, you can get a range of different sizes. So rather than having to have a whole bunch of collet extensions, you only need one, and you don't need to remove this from the router table in order to change this from being 1/2 inch to 12mm to 8mm to 1/4 inch to 6mm, or whatever size that you want. They do a whole bunch of different sizes. So it's a very simple matter. Once this is mounted in your router, in your table, it stays there forever. And so I really do recommend that. Now when I had that little accident with that awful collet extension which I'd had for so many years, I destroyed one of my sacrificial pieces on my fence. It certainly was sacrificed that day. So I've made some more, and I'll show you now how I went about it. Now the problem with reproducing a piece like this is that it's got this T-slot cut in it, and I don't have the right cutters to cut a slot like that in a solid piece of wood. But I'm going to show you how one can overcome that problem by using 2 pieces of wood to make up a replacement. Now these pieces are 18mm thick. So what I've done is I've found some material which is 9mm thick. And I've got 2 pieces which then, when joined together, will make up the 18mm thickness that I'm seeking. Before I've brought them together, I've cut a slot here which represents the larger area in the section here, and then I'm going to bring them together and glue them up tight. Then when that's done, I've cut another slot in the finished piece which then completes the task, and you can now see I've managed to reproduce that quite satisfactorily. Well, I had another whoopsie in the workshop. It was a really cold morning, about 6 degrees centigrade. I came in and I knocked over my cyclone. And I was devastated. The plastic cracked in the cold and I just couldn't use it. So I contacted Cyclone Central and they were so kind and they sent me a little tiny pot of the Tencel 12 glue and I've repaired it. And as well as using the glue, I've put some epoxy putty around here to stiffen it all up. And finally I put this black tape on really to hide the ugliness of my repair. But now it is super strong and I'll just be a little bit more careful on cold mornings when I come into the workshop. Now I've been asked if the Festool OF 1400 router will fit in the UJK router lift, and in particular in that mounting plate that's used to attach the router to the router lift. So I'm going to take mine apart and I'm going to just check to make sure whether it will fit or not. One just undoes 2 screws to get the router lift out of the table, and then this lifts straight up. I've just undone the 4 clamping bolts and moved the clamps out of the way, which should allow me to lift the router free. And there we have the mounting plate on the bottom of my router. Now at this stage, in order to check that this one will fit on there, I could take this plate off, but actually what I'm going to do, because I think it'll just be a little bit quicker, is I'm going to remove the subplate from this OF 1400 router. It's got 2 holes here in the sub base where there are screw holes in the base plate of the router itself, and all I have to do is to take this out and put it on there, and we'll see whether there are any likely places where we can screw it on. And what we're looking for is to see whether these holes here, which don't have any countersink, will match up with any holes on the universal plate. And at first glance it looks as though there might be some which are close, but if you don't find any which are close enough, there is space in this area here and the corresponding place here to drill your own hole. Now if you drill your own holes, you have to make an allowance and either countersink them or counterbore them, because the head of your screw must not be proud of the surface here. It has to be flush or subsurface on this side of the plate. Now I've actually added an extra screw of my own to hold this DeWalt router on, and I had to drill a hole for it just here, and I used a countersinking technique to get that one in. One extra tip: when you're using screws to mount a router onto a universal plate like this, use some Loctite or super glue on the threads of the screws that you're using. The reason for that is that vibration might loosen them in time, and it's a good idea to use Loctite in a situation like this. So the bottom line is, yes, with a little bit of ingenuity, you will be able to get an OF 1400 to fit onto the universal base plate. Now the OF 1400, when it's fully plunged, allows its collet to stick beyond the base of the router, which for a router table application is really useful. However, the handle here, when it's fully down like that, does interfere with the chain of the router lift mechanism. So you have a choice. Either you have your router plunged not quite so far, like so, or you take off this knob and very carefully remove the plastic bits, but then plunge the router and do up the mechanism such that it's held in place but without the knob on. Now, I've not tried that, and I'm not saying that you should do that. It may affect your warranty with the router, so if you choose to do that, that's up to you. Now I want to put a domino joint here in this piece of wood going that way, and it's not so easy having the domino going vertically here to make that sort of cut. I've got a pencil line which will show me exactly where I should position the sole plate of the domino machine, but that's about it. But there is another way. Now, you're familiar with the trim stop that comes with the domino, or rather you can buy as an extra with the domino. Well, we're used to using it like this, with a piece of wood there, and you then go into the end of the piece of wood. But actually there is another way. Turn it up like so, and I'm now going to position it on my piece of wood, and I'm going to make sure that the sole plate is lined up with my mark, which is 1 centimetre away from where I want the hole to be. It's lined up and it's held in the right position this way because of the trim stop. Now all I've got to do is to hold it in place, start it up and make my cut. And there I have a perfect domino slot. And finally, for this question and answer session, there's this super duper Roberts Ecologic 4 digital radio that I reviewed not so long ago. At the time I did the review, I didn't know quite how long the batteries would last. Now, Roberts claim that normal batteries will last up to 160 hours in this machine. I've installed, as I think you knew from my video, Ansman rechargeable batteries, and you wouldn't expect rechargeable batteries to last quite so long. But my estimate is that I've managed to achieve between 120 and 140 hours of use with these batteries. They gave up the ghost just recently, and I've just charged them using this Energy 16 charging unit. And you can get something like this from a company like, say, Wex Photographic for just over £54. Now, I think rechargeable batteries really are the way to go. It's the eco way to go, and this, after all, is an eco radio. Well, that's my last item for this question and answer session. I hope it's been useful to you. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.